Welcome to the Confidence in Christ podcast. I'm Kayla, and I'm here to offer you the opportunity to grow in your confidence of the Lord. Through interviews with friends, simple and practical scripture application to your life, and some good old-fashioned tough love at times, you will be more equipped to have an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ after hanging out here with us. I'm a woman just like you who loves the Lord with all of my heart and is doing my best to follow His will for my life. Meeting you here weekly and passing on the knowledge He has given me is part of what that looks like. I am so honored that you are here, and I can't wait to help you get to know God in new and exciting ways through the podcast. I am so glad that you are here this week because we are going to talk about the faithfulness and the goodness of God in our stories, even when we think we have completely messed up, that we are fighting the doubt, that we just need to find hope. That is what this week is all about. So if that's where you're at, hang out because we are going to talk to Lisa Stephen about her new book, A Place to Belong. And it's all about her story of being a teen mom and then through God's grace and through His workings, how she founded Hope House, Colorado, where she is committed with her team to empowering teen moms in her community and across the world. The conversation today is going to be so encouraging to your heart. Lisa helps us see how with God at the center of whatever we're doing, the impossible becomes possible. When we slow down and we stick with God and we see what He wants us to do, that we can do so much more than we could ever dream or imagine. And it's going to impact the kingdom because God's leading us. So if that's something that has just been on your heart and you're just not sure what to do, or you want to hear a story about that, that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get rid of those doubts. We're going to fight them. We're going to find hope in Jesus. And this conversation will bless you. So let's get ready and let's dive in with Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lisa. This is going to be so wonderful.
Thank you for having me. I'm super honored and excited to be here and meet your listeners.
Yes. Oh, they're going to love you. What I am excited to hear is, what is your go-to book of the Bible?
Ooh, that's a good and hard question. So the first thing that pops into my head is Ruth, because I absolutely love the
Oh,
story. Because my mother-in-law is so dear to me. I just identify with the story of Ruth. But I also have to say probably Ephesians. There are just so many amazing verses to live
mm.
by.
Oh, yes. I studied Ruth this summer and did like a deeper dive. Oh my
Mm,
goodness. Just
yes,
the way it points to Jesus and like,
I
oh,
know.
it's so
I
good. And like
know.
through a mother-in-law, like it's so
Yes.
special.
Through a mother-in-law. And so I relate to I mean, both the orphan and the widow kind of pieces of that story that, are so the people who are so dear to Jesus's heart. And I often say that I think God has a soft spot for teenage moms because in many ways they are both orphans and widows because they just literally don't typically have parents who are really in a position to care for them and have not provided really what they needed growing up. And most of the time, the father of their child is not hung around, or they're not in a healthy relationship. And so I think they kind of are both. So I just think God loves that so much.
Yes. Well, and what a great like biblical story to use when ministering to those teen
Yeah.
moms too. And that is like your mission in your heart. And I think that is so needed, especially in today's
Mm,
world, just loving teen moms
yeah.
and their children and just showing them the love of Christ. So, can you tell us about yourself, about your ministry, all the things? We're going to dive into it more, but like tell us what's
Uh,
going on.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I am a former teenage mom. My husband and I got pregnant when we were 17 and got married, and I still was wearing braces when we got married. So like all
Oh,
my wedding pictures, I'm like smiling with my lips closed if your listeners could see me right now, because I thought I looked older. And I look back now and I'm like, there's my husband in a mullet and me with my you know, 17-year-old face. Oh my goodness, we were so young.
oh,
And are still married today, 38 years later, and have three amazing grown children and three little granddaughters. And
oh,
I think one of the things about becoming a teenage parent is you just are there's this perception that now life is over. So I grew up in we talk often at Hope House about the difference between generational poverty and situational poverty. And I grew up in a middle class home, but experienced what is considered situational poverty, meaning my family really had middle class values like going to school, getting an education, going to college, saving money, some of the things that, being goal oriented and kind of driven toward a career or education are fairly middle class values. But in our family, that was all interrupted by a dad who was alcoholic and a mom who kind of let things be out of control. And so we just experienced a lot of chaos in my family growing up and a lot of dysfunction. And so becoming a teen parent and meeting my husband, he came from a family that was also middle class, but had really, his parents had worked so hard at their marriage and at creating a really strong and stable family. And so I got to have that example, which is why I love Ruth, because I got to have that example of a mother-in-law that just showed me the way and accepted
Yeah.
me even after becoming pregnant with her son and getting married so young. And you'll have to read the book, but there's like a
Yeah.
crazy story of she needed a kidney transplant for many, many years, and it just happened to come in the night before our wedding. So the book
Oh,
is called A Place to Belong, and all these crazy stories
yeah.
are in the book. But essentially, I am very blessed to have an incredible family and supportive in-law family who are my village. And the teenage mamas that I serve today don't really have that. And so we get to be that for them.
Mm. Oh, I love that. And you are so right. So I was able to get the book earlier. I'm actually holding it up right now, and it is
Oh,
so good. Oh my goodness. It is jam-packed with stories and just authenticity, which I love because we need that. We need those real life stories to be able to relate to see kind of like, okay, if God can work in that, then he can work in what I'm experiencing. It might not be the same, but it's similar. And
yep.
so many teen moms experience that just kind of abandonment. I guess
Yes.
that's a good word to use. Like, and it's so hard. But the fact that you had that mother-in-law that came along and then that can relate to like scripture, like it just that's so
Yeah.
God. Like that is
Yeah.
so God. He's like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna make good out of this, and it's going to end up being the ministry that you use to reach hundreds and thousands of people for me. So what we're going to talk about the book here in a minute, but like what is Hope House? I want to make sure we get that down right away because I know we're going to mention it a few times and I think
Yeah.
it's just so special.
Yeah, so our mission is to empower parenting teenage moms to become self-sufficient. And we do that a number of ways, but primarily it starts with relationship and loving them right where they're at, showing them the love of
Mhm.
Christ, building enough relationship and trust, which takes time because they're very wounded and come from
Right.
really rough, chaotic situations and typically generational poverty, as I mentioned, meaning they've had generations of family in chaos and dysfunction and addiction and relying on the system. And so
Mhm.
they don't trust easily. So they need a place to belong, hence the name of the book. And Hope House provides that. So we started out as a residential program. And again, I mean, you'd have to read the book, but there's just crazy miracle stories of, and really incredible doors opening that God created so that we could open this home for teenage moms 21 years ago now, and started out just serving two teenage mamas and their little ones. And today we serve about 265 moms a year on a campus in Arvada, Colorado. And we have several kind of big primary programs. We provide housing support. So we still have our initial residential program. We can house 6 to 8 teenage moms and their kiddos in that kind of group home setting. We also provide tons of housing support through partnerships and helping navigate leases and navigate renting and navigate like how do I avoid eviction, and even all the way up to home ownership as our moms get older and we serve them until they turn 25.
Oh,
And
wow.
then we offer educational programs such as GED, college and career support, financial literacy, and then all sorts of personal kind of supports like personal growth and counseling and kind of that social emotional growth and intelligence. And really, how do I how do I navigate family relationships and build healthy relationships and set boundaries in places where it's really hard to set boundaries. And oftentimes that economic self-sufficiency is so much easier in quotation marks in terms of, I know I need a GED. I never knew I could go to college. They never, like, none of them have family members who've gone to college. But when they see
Oh,
that and hear that, they're like, oh, yeah, really? Okay, cool.
oh,
But then on the personal side, it's like, how do I get out of a relationship where I'm in, like, probably maybe a violent relationship or a really unhealthy relationship, but it's keeping a roof over my head and I don't have any family to turn to and I can't be
mm,
homeless, like literally on the street with my child. So I'm living with it. Like, how do I break those patterns and dependencies? And it takes building new relationships and new support systems to be able to do that. And ultimately, I was going to say we also provide early learning. So while our mamas are in GED or studying for college and career, their kiddos can be in our little early learning program for up to 3 hours at a time right here in our resource center. But then we just had grand opening of a brand new early learning center on our site, on our campus, and we'll serve 104 of our teenage moms' kiddos with
oh,
full-time childcare. Housing, childcare, and transportation are the top three barriers to self-sufficiency. So we cannot wait to have little ones filling that building starting in about 2 weeks.
oh,
And
cool.
ultimately, when we talk about Hope House, we talk about our heart's desires that our mamas would learn how much Jesus loves them and that they
Mm,
would learn that there's nothing that's ever happened to you so that's so bad or that you've ever done that's so bad that God would stop loving you or having a plan for your life. And if we can show them that through the way we love them, then we've won the day, no matter how far they get in their self-sufficiency.
mm. Oh my goodness. Like the work you guys are doing is just so outstanding and such
Ah,
holy work. And I love that you just kind of
mhm.
ended with like, we want to make sure that they know like there's nothing that has ever been done to them or that they've done that could take the love of Christ away. Like that is at the core of all of that because you're showing them Christ's love through all of those programs and the new opening. Like, man, like so good. And I think it's something that a lot of us just don't think about or don't like it might cross our mind, but we're like, I don't like I wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to helping a teen mom. Like, I don't know. But there's amazing places like Hope House, whether we're local to Colorado or not, that can step in and be the hands and feet of Jesus right where they are,
Yes.
meeting them right where they are, which I think is so important because we all need someone to meet us right where we are. And that is
Yes.
just, it's so special.
And it's so easy. If you ever happen to bump into a teen mom at the mall or wherever, all you have to do is ask them their baby's name and
Mm,
their whole face will light up. And like follow it up with, oh my goodness, that's the cutest name I ever heard. And they are immediately engaged. Like they're like
yeah.
any other mama. They just want to know that their baby is cute and adorable and that people are interested in them and they aren't like that. I see you, like I see you and I see your
Yeah.
baby. That's the easiest way to start conversation if you ever happen to bump into a teenage mama.
Oh, I love that. That's something super practical that we can take away from this. I always love offering those things because it's like, what can we like? We've heard all this, like, what can we walk away with? But like, that's great because sometimes like you don't know what to say, and that's
Yeah.
perfect. Like, I am all for cute babies. Like, I love that, and I love calling like, oh my gosh, like, and names are so creative these days. Like, oh,
I
that's
know.
such a great tip. Thank you so much for that because that's something
Yeah.
that we need. So in the book, so it's called A Place to Belong, and I'm going to read the subtitle because I think it's great. So, the true story of a teen mom, a humbling leadership journey in a house called Hope. And I think it's so cool because it's stories, but it's also like your story, and it's very like vulnerable and authentic and just like here's what God did. Like, look at all of these things. And as you looked back over your life, it was really fun to read. Like, oh my goodness, like, there's where God was. That's where he was. Like, we didn't see him at first, but here he is now. And just sharing the story had to be um hard, I would think, like to like
Yeah.
open up in that way. So what led you to sharing your story in this way?
Thank you for asking. So it was yeah, it took me a minute. So in the book, you'll hear how I have a tendency to sort of argue with God, like, really, God, you want me to do that? Are you sure about that? And so when it was actually a pastor on our board of directors who said, Pastor John Tellis, and he said, you got to write this book. And I'm like, I don't want to write a book. And then our director of development, who is our, like, that's development is a term for fundraising in the nonprofit world. And she's been with us 13 years and she's like, yeah, you got to write this book. And I'm like, I don't want to write this book. And then my husband said, you've been writing this book since like the beginning of Hope House, because I've been journaling ever since the beginning of Hope House. And I was never a journaler. I love to write, but I've never been a journaler until we started Hope House. And there was just so much stuff in my head and in my heart. And I'm like, I had to just write this stuff down to sort it out. And so still today I journal like most days. And I'm like, how do you take 20 years worth of journals and turn that into a book?
Yeah.
And the part that I struggled with and that I was like, I don't know about this, God, is telling my own story, which I talk often about being a teenage mom. Like that's not hard. It relates totally to what I'm doing, but I
Mhm.
don't typically talk about like growing up in such a rough home situation and what that really was like,
Mhm.
and how I really relate to our teenage moms through that piece of my life. And so that part was like, oh my gosh, everybody I know and everybody who works for me, which we now have 52 employees. I'm like, well, they're going to get an education in Lisa Stephen, like right up front when they get the book. And now I'm like, I can't remember what story I told in the book. Do you already know this? Like if we're just out for lunch. So it was definitely like it was hard to be that vulnerable.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that people, my friends and my family who've read it now, don't tend to look at that piece as being the part that was really vulnerable. They tend to look at talking about all the leadership lessons that I
Mm.
learned and was totally open to sharing, that they felt were so vulnerable. And I'm like, man, that's crazy because all those total fall flat on your face leadership stories are like easy to tell.
Yeah.
That's like super easy compared to the other stuff. But yeah, I have had many and they're some of them are a riot. So when you read it in the book, and some of them are flat out humbling. Being a leader is just I say it's one long series of learning to let go.
Mm.
Because God calls you to do something that fills your heart with so much joy and passion, and you do it and you do it to the best of your ability. And if you do it well and you allow Him to surround you with the most amazing people to make it happen, and then He gives you a little more of His kingdom to be responsible for, and you have to let go of a
Yeah.
little piece so that you can grab that new piece. And it's just like today, I don't work directly with teenage moms at all. I run the organization and help solve big problems like childcare and housing, and
Hmm.
create coalitions across the city and across our country. And I the teenage moms I do get to work with are the two girls who speak at our gala every year. And I'm like, those are my mamas. I do their speech coaching. I take them shopping for a dress. I get two mamas a year. So
Oh.
those are my mamas. But I don't get to, you have to let go so much as you grow as a
Hmm.
leader.
Yeah.
You never know that starting out.
Right, until it happens. And then you're like, wait. And then like you go through a grieving process of like, oh, I
Yes.
have to let go of that. And
Yes.
I think it's so cool how you said like parts of your story that you thought people would like really relate to. Like they do, but that wasn't the part that stood out to them. And I
Yeah.
think like that is such a God thing. He's like, I want you to share all of it because it's gonna reach someone no matter who it is.
Mm.
But like the parts that like it's just gonna surprise you which parts
Mm.
people pull out and hold on to. And it takes that step of like trusting God to share our story. So whether we are starting a big nonprofit like Hope House or literally just sharing what God did in our life yesterday, like
Yeah.
that it takes that vulnerability. So as you did that and you shared parts of like what your home life was like all the way to leadership and like the things that you were easier to share versus harder. Um how did your confidence in the Lord, like, how did that have to be kind of stable in order for you to start sharing those stories, whether
Mm.
written or
Yeah.
just one on one?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, there is no story without God. There is no
Yeah.
Hope House. There is no 38 years of marriage. It's highly unusual for people to get married at 17 and still be married today.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is no story, or it doesn't look anything like this without Jesus. And it's not like I started out with this faith that was like unshakable. And like I even today will, like I said, still be arguing with God. Like, are you sure about this? Are you sure you're wanting me to do this? Um, but at the heart of it is always a going back to who you know God to be. And sometimes
Mm,
it's picking that favorite book of the Bible and just spending a lot of time in it. Sometimes it's relying on those wise advisors and women or men of great faith around you. A lot of times it's what you're hearing in your pastor's sermon on a Sunday, or picking up in your quiet time. But somewhere deep down you're hearing that little voice, like, and it's not like I knew I was going to start this nonprofit that was going to turn into what Hope
right.
House turned into. It could just be, hey, I want you to volunteer for this particular thing, or I know your heart tugs when you think about this population, or animals, or the environment, or whatever it is that like tugs on your heart, that you know Jesus is going, hey, take a little step, just take a little step. And if you can just like be brave enough to take that first step of saying yes to that little tugging, he will literally take you on your adventure of a lifetime. And it's so
Mm,
beautiful. And it grows your faith incrementally as you go. It's not like you start out with this like huge, Mother Teresa level of faith. And someday in heaven, I can't wait to ask her what her very first tiny little step was and how her faith grew. But like you just you just take each day as it comes, and there's something so beautiful to that. And then you get to look back as you get older, and I'm older now, so I get to look back and see where God has been faithful and
mm,
how he has kept his promises time after time. Even when it didn't look the way I thought it would, it didn't come as quick as I thought it would. It was in an unexpected format or from an unexpected person, but he always came through.
mm. Oh, I think that's so important to say. Like, this book came from a place of looking back at all the years of God's faithfulness. So, like, as we read this, like, you had no idea, one, this was going to be a book, even to recent years, but two, that like God would compile such a beautiful journey that was hard in parts, that had wilderness seasons, that where you fell flat on your face, making
Yeah.
taking chances on what He had asked you to do, but like we will all have a book inside of us at some
Oh, yeah.
point where we can look back and be like, if I wrote all this stuff down, it would be a book. And I think realizing that our books are not like, he doesn't just give it to us and be like, all right, like this is what's going to happen in your life. He's going to slowly change us and transform us more into the likeness of Jesus as we go along. And we can't just skip to the last page and be like, oh, here's the end of the story. We
So good.
live and breathe our own story, our own book. And
Yeah.
yours
Yeah.
just happens to look like Hope House. I mean, you
Yep.
started as a teen mom, like scared,
Yeah.
not with a great support system. And look at what God did through that. And I
Yeah.
think it's so, so important to just highlight that like you're just a regular person, like all of us listening and chatting. And like we have stories just like that. And it's so neat to watch God work and see people like you that step up and walk through faith, even if it starts with little steps, and see God change things. It's just, I love that you're sharing it because we need this as encouragement to keep going and to follow Jesus into the crazy unknown, because it's always unknown to us, but it's known to him, which that's
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
it builds our confidence.
And don't disqualify yourself, because it's
Yeah,
seriously, my background is I did home daycare and I worked at J.C. Penney's. Like, I have no college degree. I still don't know how to type. I still type with three fingers, but I'm very fast with three fingers.
that's awesome.
Like, I literally am the least qualified person to do this job on the planet. People think all the time, like, oh, you have a master's of social work or some such thing. No, just a whole lot of really amazing advisors and people around me who I've learned buckets from, like
Mm,
just soaking up and absorbing what I can from all of the people that God has put in my path. So don't count yourself out, even if it feels like what God's calling you to is like, hey, are you sure? Like, not me, I can't. Who am I? Like, that's where he does his best work. That's where he
yeah.
shows up like the most, in the most huge ways, where you get to point to it and go, there is no other explanation for this besides God. Like, it's so
Mhm.
easy to share the story of God when people come and visit Hope House, because there is no other explanation but to point to what he's done here.
Yeah.
And he's starting to do it across the country. We're in the process of building an affiliate network. We have a Hope House opening in Orange County, California, and two additional Hope Houses in northern and southern Colorado. So we're we're just seeing what God does next, and it's
Mm.
so beautiful to be a part of.
Oh, oh, that's so awesome. Thank you. Listen, stop and like hit rewind and listen back just a few minutes and like take that truth that like you do not have to be qualified. Like God will equip you with whatever you need to carry out what he has planned for the kingdom through you. So like re-listen to that because I think we all need that. But I'm so excited that you guys are opening more Hope Houses. Like that is wonderful.
Yeah,
So where
so good.
like because I'm in Indiana, so like I'm not close to California or Colorado. But like if
Yes.
I would like meet a teen mom or if I would have someone that I would love to like point towards you guys or point towards a similar um like place of hope, basically a place of help. How can I do that? Whether it be locally or like what are some things
Uh,
that we could take away like okay, this is a way that I can point people towards help.
yeah, so one really easy thing is look up either Young Lives, which is kind of the arm of Young Life that serves teenage moms. So
Oh, okay.
Young Lives, or look up Teen Mops, which is now the Momco. So I guess it's Teen Momco.
Oh.
There are teen mops groups and teen mother support groups for young mothers through Young Lives all over the country. So no matter where you live, you can probably find a way to plug in with teen moms if you look for one of those two groups. If you're interested in just learning more about what Hope House is and how if God happens to be tugging on your heart, like who me, you want me to open a home for teen moms or do some sort of like resource type center for teen moms, just look on our website, email us info@hopehousecolorado.org. It's all there on our website. We will call you, we will discuss it with you, we'll share everything with you. Um, our affiliates are they have their own nonprofit status and their own boards of directors, do their own fundraising, but we equip them with everything else they need for free, which is huge to me because when
Yeah.
we were starting Hope House, nobody would help. Everybody was like, well, it's either $50,000 for this curriculum or call me back when you get a little farther along. And I'm like, if I knew what farther along looked like, I would not be calling you. So,
Oh my
so we do what we
goodness.
can for free.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And I love that. They're like, it like God's blessed you. So you're like, all right, like let's get this as far and wide as we possibly can because we're the
Yep.
hands and feet of Jesus and like let's just help. And I think it's so important to know that like we are not helpless when it comes to stepping in and building relationships with teen moms that need that. Because I mean, you've said a few times like that relationship is so important.
hmm
And
hmm
it's hard for them to build those new relationships and those new support systems. So if you could, if nothing else, point them in the right direction or just be a good friend to them, like that is
Yeah.
so important. And Hope House obviously has tons of resources that we could access and get and different things like that. So like Lisa said, if that's something that's tugging on your heart, like make sure and look that up because links are in the show notes. You guys can find it there. But don't disqualify yourself. Like we mentioned earlier, like
Absolutely.
if God has something for you and you just can't get it off your mind, like pray about it. Ask him, what does this look like? How can I do this? Because I'm sure that's somewhat of what Lisa did. Like, okay, Lord, like you're asking me to do this. Like, you got to show me what it is. You got to tell me step by step because I'm obviously not qualified. Help me, Lord. And he
Yeah.
will do it because he's faithful. He's so
Because he's
faithful.
faithful. And it's one little thing each day. It took us 3 years before we got the residential home open. So it was long. It took a long time
Yeah.
to just like follow a dream. And every day we would just say, I'm going to do one thing. If there's one phone
Mhm.
call you could make, one article you can read, one Google search you can do on whatever is tugging on your heart, do that. And it'll lead to the next thing. And then the next thing. It's not going to be like,
Yeah.
hey, I have a heart for teen moms and then Hope House is open in 2 days. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
I just 100% love the homeless and I want to get involved but don't know how, like just look up a local ministry or read an article or like you said pray about it and just each day one little thing and it will grow itself, like God will grow it around you.
Oh, and he's so faithful. Like he's gonna show up but we have to be patient because it's in his time. Just like you said,
Yeah.
3 years. Oh my gosh. I'd been antsy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I wanted to quit.
right. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. But God showed up and look at where it is now because you were faithful and you were persistent in doing those one things. So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. This has been so good. Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. What encouragement do you have for maybe a teen mom that's listening or somebody that their heart is being pulled towards this and they want to
Mm.
step out in faith and see what God wants to do next? What do you have to say to them?
Mm. So in my book, I think what the most powerful image to me is that somewhere out there right now, there's a teenage mama curled up with her baby, just wondering what in the heck she's supposed to do next. Like she wants to create a better life for her little one so badly, and she just doesn't know how. She has no support. She has no one around her. And God's whispering in her ear, just hold on, I'm sending my people. And at the
Mm.
same time, he's whispering in your ear, hey, you're my people. I'm sending
Yeah.
you for whatever it is, whether it's that mama curled up or some other thing that tugs your heart. He's whispering in your ear. At the same time, he's whispering in theirs. And so it's not really optional. It's like a mandate. We have to take that next step, that one thing,
Yeah.
that Google that article or make that call or have coffee with that person because God's doing something. And man, you don't want to miss out. You do not want to miss
Yeah.
out on what he's doing because it is gloriously fun at the same time as being gloriously hard.
Oh my gosh, that was the best wrap up of that ever. Like it's so much fun, but it's so hard, but it's worth it because it's
Yes.
Jesus. Like it's so worth it.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is. It's always better than we can dream up anyway. Okay, so we've got info at hopehousecolorado.org. And I've got other links in the show notes so people can find it there. But where can they get the book and hear your story and share it with others? Because this is not a book that we just read and keep to ourselves. We're gonna pass it along and make sure everybody gets their hands on it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. You can find it on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and look for A Place to Belong by Lisa Stephen. You can also find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. It's called Life Reviewed, and it's amazing and has our teen moms and alumni as guests. And if you think
Awesome.
my stories are amazing, wait till you hear them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, now you have a new podcast to listen to also. That's
Yay,
great.
and I'm so excited to. I just love you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy, and you are so authentic and so just genuine. I just love getting to meet you, and I hope I get to in person someday.
Yes, we're gonna make this happen for sure. Well, thanks
Yes.
for joining me. This has just been wonderful. Another great conversation. I tell you, God just sends such amazing people into my path that I get to connect you with, that you can see the goodness and the faithfulness of God through their stories. And I hope that it just helps you recognize how precious and how timely your story is as well. All of these different people that you hear every single week on the podcast, they all started in the same place that you might be right now, wondering if you're even doing what you're supposed to be doing, asking God, what is next? Why have you brought me through these different trials? Like, what is it? He wants you to share your story because it is going to impact someone for the kingdom. It's going to give somebody hope, just like Lisa's story. She started out as a teen mom. She never thought when she was a teenager, man, I just want to work with teen moms. No, the Lord had a plan for her and she listened. And so many times, if you listen back, she says, like, it was not easy. And we know that it's not easy to obey the Lord and to stick with his plan because it makes no sense at times. But when we do, the adventure that God takes us on is so much more amazing than anything we could ever dream up or imagine because he is in charge and he has got a beautiful and abundant plan laid out for you, for me, for every single person on the planet. He's got a plan for it. It's just, are we going to trust him? Are we going to follow him and obey and do the hard things that he asks us to do to see the change that he is asking us to help make for the kingdom? It's hard, but it's holy and it's so, so worth it. I so enjoyed talking with Lisa and hearing her story and hearing about Hope House and how that one thing in her life has completely changed the trajectory of her world and how she is using that to impact teen moms and help them know the love of Jesus. It's amazing, and it is only a God story. Like, only God could do that. No one else could make that happen. Only the Lord. And man, how exciting is that? Also, I wanted to make sure that you guys were up to date on what's going on. So each week I send out an e-newsletter that just kind of gives you a heads up and a little bit more in depth about what is going on that week on the podcast. So if you guys have not subscribed to my email list yet, make sure you hop over to kayladiane.com and you do that right now, because every week you'll automatically get an email. There's special offers in there. You find things out first, like all of the things. I also give lots of my Spotify playlists that I mention on social media. You can find all of those on the weekly email. So make sure you guys are getting signed up for that. I also want to make sure that you guys heard that I am now offering one-on-one coaching. Have you ever wished that there was someone who truly understands the struggles you face as a mom? Someone who can help you overcome the overwhelm and experience the freedom that Jesus offers? That's what I am doing through my one-on-one coaching. I give you dedicated time to ask the hard questions, to gain clarity, and be brought closer to Jesus, all while managing the busyness of life. It's a space where you can lay down the overwhelm and receive guidance and encouragement tailored to your unique challenges. It's a place where you'll discover how to prioritize your spiritual growth without feeling like you have one more thing to do on your to-do list. It's an opportunity that is perfect for moms who need practical, compassionate support to move from surviving to thriving in their relationship with Christ. So if you desire to have a strong relationship with God, if you struggle to see your worth, if you want those practical faith-based strategies to stop the overwhelm, and you want to pass on a legacy of faith to your family, please go head over to kayladiane.com/coaching and check it out. You can fill out the free application to see kind of, is this for me? Is this what I want to do? It is very affordable because I want you to get the support that you need and just point you to Jesus every chance that I get. So if that is something that the Lord has been putting on your heart, that maybe you just need somebody to talk to and help you walk through life right now, I would love and be honored to be the person to do that with you. So make sure you check that out soon. I am, again, just so blessed that you joined me this week, and I pray that you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you right back here next Wednesday with another great conversation pointing you to more confidence in Christ. If this episode encouraged you, please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast player. It blesses me and blesses others by letting them know how much this has impacted you. For more resources, please visit my website at kayladiane.com.